Welcome to the Holy Post. The Church of England has decided to not allow same-sex marriages, but it says it will bless same-sex civil unions. Is this a wise compromise or a terrible attempt to dodge a divisive issue? Then Brazil's president has lost his re-election, and his conservative Christian supporters have stormed the Capitol. Is the American church now exporting its own nuttiness? New research from Gallop reveals which professions are the most and least trusted. So where do pastors land in the list? All that, plus AI is causing layoffs, Trump is angry at evangelical leaders, and broken Japanese toilets. Before we jump into the episode, a reminder that we have some new content exclusive for our supporters on Patreon. Christian Asks has a new episode where Christian wonders, why do we pray to God to not lead us into temptation in the Lord's Prayer? We also have new episodes of Getting Schooled by Caitlin Chess, some brand new selections for our Holy Post book club, and later this month we'll be doing a live stream for our Patreon supporters where you can interact directly with me and Phil and ask questions. So if you haven't signed up yet, go to holypost.com and click Support Us. Okay, here's episode 546.
Hey there, welcome back to the Holy Post podcast. This is Phil Fisher. I'm here with Christian Taylor. Hi, Christian.
Hi, Phil.
Good to see you.
Thank you. It's great to see you.
And Sky Jitani, who is congested. Hi, congested Sky.
I am congested. I hope people aren't too distracted by my nasal noise.
So let's all talk that way.
Yeah.
Yes, I think we should. And that way you'll seem normal.
I'll mute my mic when I have to blow my nose.
I used to do Percy P. Percy P in VeggieTales was a kid who was very congested all the time, and it was a fun character to do. But they didn't write very much for him after the bankruptcy, so I didn't get to bring him out very often. So then I wrote a piece for him for the TBN show that I thought would be great, and he was a kid at a desk at a school talking about all the stuff he thought was cool because he was kind of a nerd, and they changed the character to deliver all the same lines to a new character they'd come up with. I didn't get to do Percy P.
I think he's cute.
Very disappointing.
I think he's kind of annoying.
He thinks you're kind of annoying, Sky.
I am kind of annoying,
so
especially with
the feeling
congested
is mutual.
nose. Yeah.
Okay, and now the theme song. What's the news that you like the most? Who's your favorite podcast host? If it's breakfast, get your toast. It's Sky and Phil and the Holy Post. Sky and Phil and the Holy Post. And sometimes Christian. Hey kids, what's your favorite thing to hear from Phil? I know what it is. Now it's time for News of the Butt.
And now it's time for News of the Butt.
Oh, Caitlin, where are you?
Yeah, where's Caitlin?
I don't know,
Why?
but I like her to hear the news of the butt.
Oh, yeah, but she makes faces. You make noises. She
like-
makes faces, and her faces kind of make me feel bad. And her mom doesn't like it, so, you know. But I thought, because you were here last week, so I assumed she would be here this week, and I was planning on doing this. So I was going to give her, you know, the opportunity to be offended.
Well, that is very, very kind of you. Now you may go ahead.
Okay. See-through toilets malfunction in Tokyo. Tokyo has some public toilets that are clear. Tokyo's Shibuya ward announced Friday that two of its public restrooms, known as see-through toilets, in which the glass walls of the restrooms become opaque once you're inside, had a problem and were not becoming opaque. So you went inside, maybe you're assuming they've become opaque because that's how it's supposed to work. And you think, well, I can see out, but they can't see in. It's like a one-way mirror thing. No, they weren't working because it got too cold and they were liquid crystal and the liquid crystals froze when it got too cold and it damaged it. So they just stopped working. That's a problem.
Are these like public pay toilets?
Yeah. Out on the street.
Yeah, because I remember decades ago I was in Europe and they had these public pay toilets, I think in France, and you'd pay to use them, the door opens, but when your time is up, the door opened, like automatically.
Oh, wow.
So I didn't know if that's like these where when your time is up, the glass becomes transparent
Transparent?
again.
That would be...
So you better get your business done, you know?
I don't know. You want to know an interesting statistic, though, about those? I tried to put one of those in my shower because I'd been in a hotel.
A pay toilet? You tried to put a pay toilet in your shower?
Well, I tried
Cheaper
to put
than renters.
I tried to put that glass in my shower so that when you got in the shower, it wasn't like clear glass. It was, opaque,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So we all wired it up and put it all in there. And then we discovered that that is only opaque when it turns off. So if you want the glass to be clear, you have to turn the power on and it heats up the molecules and then it's clear. And I was like, well, I don't want it on all the time. That sucks electricity.
Yeah.
So I don't know what happened over there, but I'll tell you this. When you were describing that story, I started smelling it. So that couldn't be good.
You started
smelling the bathroom.
Oh.
Yeah. Yuck.
Okay. All
But
right.
if you were standing and you were a guy, that would be even worse.
I think almost any scenario other than just washing your hands, you're sitting on the toilet and you're looking at people who they must be looking in the mirror of themselves. They're not staring at me.
Sounds like some kind of
crazy.
avant-garde modern art.
Yes.
I'm in trouble with my sinuses.
Yes.
Okay, so it's because of the cold, though. Is this like a global warming story or a climate change story?
No, I don't think so. It was just cold, and they hadn't tested the doors in that much cold, and the glass in that much cold, and didn't realize that it would break the thing. So the ward took measures to make the walls opaque for the time being until they can figure it out.
They could just put paper up or something.
And this has been news of the butt. The Japanese would never use paper as walls. That's ridiculous. Okay, moving right on.
This has been the news of the butt.
We talked about artificial intelligence. Remember when we talked about artificial intelligence?
Oh, yeah.
And how it was sweeping the nation? And
I do.
One of, I think, my predictions, or I forget who, was that this year we'd see sermons composed by AI. CNET, do you ever read CNET? The really giant tech news website has been quietly publishing entire articles generated by AI without telling anyone. CNET, a massively popular tech news outlet, has been employing the help of, quote, automation technology on a new wave of financial explainer articles. The articles have been published, someone just noticed this, the articles have been published under the unassuming appellation of, quote, CNET money staff. That's who wrote the article, the money staff. But then if you click on CNET money staff, the actual authorship pops up and a little pop-up says, this article was generated using automation technology.
See, this is not good for people like me. Writers are now going to be outsourced.
It's true. I've already been outsourcing writers with AI.
Well, and voiceovers are being outsourced.
I'm in big trouble. I'm in big trouble.
Yeah, because I've been, watching a lot of Blender tutorial videos on YouTube where people show you how to do different things in Blender. And I would say about half of them are now AI narrated because someone just feeds in the script. If English isn't their first language, it doesn't matter. You just feed in the script and you have a lovely, neutral English narrator describing Blender.
And you can have videos now made. We're practicing that this week. I mean, all you got to do is take your content, put it in, and you get your video. And it's remarkable how fast it is and how good they can be. So it's a little bit scary.
I got a funny feeling about this. Sky, do you have a funny feeling about this?
I do. Very funny. But not ha-ha funny. Like scary funny.
Not ha-ha.
Murder clown funny.
But I will tell you this. Did you see the article today from Reuters where Google laid off 12,000 people because of AI technology? Well, that was the theory.
Really? It wasn't the economy? Because everyone's like Microsoft just is laying off 10,000 people.
Right.
And Amazon is laying off. Amazon laying off 13,000 people. But part of that is they're shrinking their hardware business because the whole Alexa thing they never figured out how to make a profit on it. So they're shrinking some of their major initiatives down. Also killing Amazon Smile, which was their charitable effort where you could buy things and have a little money go to your favorite charity. We don't need that anymore. I think charities have more money than they need. So let's kill that. Something weird's going on, man.
There is something weird.
Something weird's going on. And there's also something moving right along because this is a hard-hitting, fast-paced news show that we do now in our new format of Just the News, Please. Just the News, Please.
People said they liked that.
Yeah, some people said they liked it, and I think the people that don't like it just haven't written to us yet. I don't know. No one said they don't like it yet. So anyway, this week, or today, it's just the news, and then later this week, it's the interview. And you get more. You get more for your money, for your same either $0 or a little bit of dollars if you subscribe on Patreon. You get more. It's a better value. And that's what we're, unlike Amazon, we're interested in giving you a better value, not a worse value. The Church of England just came out with something kind of big that they've been thinking about and discussing for 6 years. They are about to issue their official policy on same-sex couples, and it's official in the Church of England. Same-sex couples can't get married, but can have a service in a Church of England church to receive God's blessing. In a decision sure to satisfy no one.
Yeah, they split the baby on this one.
They split the baby on this one. The Church of England has announced its support for a proposal that will allow congregations to bless same-sex unions, but maintain a traditional definition of marriage. The statement released by the denomination Wednesday announced plans for bishops to propose, quote, prayers of thanksgiving, dedication, and for God's blessing for same-sex couples, as well as to urge all congregations in their care to welcome same-sex couples unreservedly and joyfully. At the same time, the Archbishop of Canterbury, do you know who the current Archbishop of Canterbury is?
I do not. Please educate me.
Sky?
I don't.
Okay. Justin Welby. Not Justin Brierly, Justin Welby. He says, I am under no illusions that what we are proposing today will appear to go too far for some and not nearly far enough for others, but it is my hope that what we have agreed will be received in a spirit of generosity, seeking the common good. What are the odds, do you think, that what they have proposed will be universally received with a spirit of generosity?
Universally?
I don't think so.
Pretty much zero.
But, I was told at one point by a lawyer, namely, whose name will go unspoken, that a good verdict is one in which no one is happy. So,
Yeah.
All right, well, they achieved that.
See, but here's the problem, okay? And this is really, every denomination, is having to address this in some way. And as for something as big as the Church of England,
dun, 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 dun.
it's kind of a big deal. It's like, was the king involved? Was the queen involved since she died when most of this conversation was over? What's interesting is, that they're trying to say we are reaching a compromise on an issue where both sides have decided compromise is immoral. So how does that work? Sky, help us out. Can we how do you meet in the middle when both sides believe the middle is demonic?
Well, I don't know about the conversations within the Church of England, if that's really the case. Are they facing the same culture war dynamics that we are here in the U.S.? Probably. I don't know. But it does sound like they found a middle ground, but I don't know how big the constituency is that will affirm that. Hopefully it's larger than it would be here in the U.S., but what
that would affirm that would support middle ground, you mean?
Yeah,
that would support compromise on the issue?
Right. So, if they had done one or the other, like absolutely no gay marriage, no blessing of gay marriage, no acceptance of LGBT folks in the church, they would have alienated a huge chunk of people. Or if they had gone far the other extreme and done full inclusion and affirmation of same-sex marriage, they would have lost a huge chunk of people. And having not been a fly in the room, you don't know how much of this was politically driven. And by politically, I mean just maintaining peace within their constituency, and how much of it was convictionally driven based on theological and biblical conviction. But I know it's hard for me as an outsider to throw stones at their decision when I trust that they did weigh all these factors.
I'm not throwing stones at the decision, and I think it's commendable to try to reach a compromise, to try to say, well, we're holding to, because here's what they say. They are not changing their teaching that marriage is between one man and one woman for life. Okay, they believe the biblical position on marriage. What they are saying is that same-sex couples will be allowed to have a service in which there would be prayers of dedication, thanksgiving for God's blessing on the couple in church following a civil marriage or partnership. So if you've had a civil marriage service somewhere else, you can then come to a Church of England, an Anglican church, and actually have a service where God's blessing is given to you in some way. And I don't know how conservatives would not view that as, capitulation.
Right.
You're blessing this. You're blessing this. How can you do that? And also on the other side, but you're still saying it's illegitimate in some sense, that it's not a marriage.
So what they're saying is we're blessing it, but we're not going to call it marriage.
We're blessing your commitment to each other, I guess.
And who enforces this? How is this policed? Is there someone there to make sure that the word marriage is never used in this blessing ceremony?
The Bishop of Canterbury has eyes and ears everywhere. You know how many cameras there are, like security cameras in London, like a zillion?
Yeah, in church sanctuaries, I'm sure there are many.
Yeah. Security cameras. Yeah, it's like the Gestapo. Christian, you were going to say?
Well, I was going to just, throw this out there, that the church gives blessing no matter who the people are, Really,
we bless people.
Right, we bless people. And I think that this blessing service is blessing these people. I mean, yes. I think that's the point of it.
But the idea of the church blessing anything is a stand-in for God blessing something, right?
But God is going to bless those people. And I would hope that if two same-sex people commit their lives to one another, I may not agree with whatever they decide to do, but it doesn't matter. I still want God to bless them.
So
until you've made it a culture war issue, then you don't want God to bless them.
Let me play devil's advocate here, Christian.
Maybe.
And let's say an opposite sex couple comes into the church and says, we don't want to get married. We're not into marriage. We're just living together, but we want the church to bless our living together, but it's not marriage.
Okay, I'm going to say this from personal experience. There are people in my family that have made this choice, much to my chagrin, and I have a choice. I can choose to stand in condemnation and break relationship and fellowship with people that I disagree with, or I can pray that God will bless this relationship and these people and pray for, their faith individually or as a couple. I'm not going to not be in relationship with them.
Right. But that's a choice that you or I might make as a parent or as a friend but when the institution of the church is asked to do that, they are speaking on behalf of the Christian faith, the morality of the Christian life, the authority of the scriptures, things like that. That's where it gets kind of different.
But they have to address it in some way. You can't just ignore the elephant in the room.
Right.
And that's what they've done.
Okay, here's a question. I have a question. Was it the United Methodists? Some Methodist group just split over same-sex marriage.
Right.
And, the role of LGBT in the church. Could they have done this instead, I guess is my question. Could they have avoided a split by saying, well, let's meet in the middle and do something like this? Or is the issue too emotionally charged in the U.S. for that to happen?
I'm guessing it's too emotionally charged. And maybe that's the case in England too. We don't know. Time will tell. But I think it's probably, this is not an area that people feel a great deal of compromise.
No, they don't. So are you impressed that the Church of England is trying to compromise?
I will say this. Again, for me, it always comes down personally. I try to think about what the real world applications are here. I actually know a lot of very committed, passionate Christians who have a relationship with God who are homosexual. And they have been married They are committed to each other, who have felt very ostracized and not able to have a place of worship. And I know it's a hot button issue. I struggle with it all as well, but I do know that I feel very sad that there are people in our midst who don't feel welcome in a church because of how they choose to live their lives. Aren't we saying that those people should be welcome in our churches?
I don't think this is a question of is someone welcomed. It's what is the doctrine of the church? How is the church being asked to change its doctrine in order to accommodate to new realities? And what the Church of England has tried to say is we're not going to change our doctrine, but we want everyone to feel welcomed. That's the needle they're trying to thread.
I do respect them for that, actually.
And so, whereas in the United States with some of these denominational fights, it is about, are we fundamentally changing the Christian doctrine of marriage? And one side saying absolutely not, and the other side saying, well, if you don't, then you're not loving and you're not welcoming. That's been the construct of the fight. And I think all of that is probably an oversimplification. But I don't think this is about are people welcomed and loved. It's do we need to change Christian doctrine in order for that to be the case?
Right. Do you remember David French in his position, of saying there's covenantal marriage, which is Christian marriage, biblical marriage, and there's civil marriage, which is defined by the state, and that he did not oppose the state saying civil marriage, could apply to same-sex couples because it's distinct from covenantal marriage. And I guess that's my question.
That also is splitting the baby.
Yeah, it is. It is it's saying there's two different realities. There's a sacred reality and a civic reality, a legal reality, and that, you get to a point where to deny the legal reality to everyone just seems, inconsiderate or uncaring.
But we also do that all the time on punitive issues. So, for example, there was a time in American law where committing adultery could put you in jail. The church would still say adultery is a sin and it might bring church discipline, but it's not criminal in the civil courts to commit adultery.
Right.
So we've separated ecclesiastical law and civil law since the Massachusetts Bay Colony, or at least since the Rhode Island and Roger Williams sought that. But there's no reason why we can't do that in other matters as well, which is, I think, what David French and numerous others are trying to say.
Here's where I think it gets tricky, and where people who are want to hold to the traditional view are going to have trouble with this. Part of the statement says, for the first time under historic plans outlined today, same-sex couples will be able to come to church to give thanks for their civil marriage or civil partnership. Okay, now that, I think most people would say, okay, yeah, he's not done yet, and receive God's blessing. So I think it's hard to say, if you're conservative on this issue, that they have not changed their position. If God is blessing a civil marriage, even if it doesn't line up with biblical marriage. And I would love to hear them unpack that, how they got there, or is that really the heart of the compromise, and they're at least changing practice, if not theology.
Right.
I don't see how that changes theology.
Well, you're asking God to bless something that historically the church has never recognized as a blessing.
Yeah. Or that was approved of by God.
Right. It's a sticky wicket.
I just don't,
because they're not coming to the Church of England to ask for personal blessings. They're asking for a blessing on their relationship. And if you've taught historically that relationship, it goes against the teaching of the Bible, it's hard to figure out how you got to God blessing it without changing your theology. That's my question.
Right. Which is why I asked about a cohabitating opposite-sex couple, where historically the church has not blessed that either. But is that now open to blessing because it's a common reality in our culture?
How many people do you know that get married in a church under a pastor? Let's say they're opposite-sex couples. They don't go to church. They don't have any outside, manifestation of their Christian faith, and yet they want to come, have a marriage in the church, and be blessed by God, and we say that's okay?
Well, some pastors won't do that. Some
Right.
pastors would say, if you're not committed to following God, and if you're, in some cases, and if you're not a member of this church, I'm not going to officiate in that service.
And historically, that's been very true, Christian, that's a very common thing, but it's becoming less and less common. Fewer and fewer people are raised in the church. Fewer of them feel the need for a church-officiated wedding, and people are doing all kinds of alternatives. But you're right. Yeah, that has been the case that a lot of churches will marry an opposite-sex couple sight unseen almost.
And I guess to your point, well, God blesses opposite-sex couples' marriage, so whether or not they follow Christ or not, it doesn't matter. Theologically, it's consistent.
I think the argument there would be God blesses marriage.
And marriage is defined as a man and a woman.
And here's how you
for
define
life.
marriage.
Right.
So we're moving, the Church of England, from their perspective, moving to a perspective that says God blesses committed relationships between two people, whether or not it's marriage in the biblical sense. Interesting?
Right.
Interesting?
I just wish God would come down and make it clear so that we can stop discussing this and arguing about it, and he can just speak for himself.
Yeah,
Well,
that would
that's-
be really
that's
nice.
what people on both sides would say he has made it clear, and that's why they won't compromise.
Yeah. And so, yeah, it's lovely. It's just so much fun. Oh, I bet, where I think we could really solve this? Twitter. I think Twitter is probably the place where we could solve this.
I said this last time, Twitter is a sandbox for throwing sand.
Sand, yes, and you are correct. And I have some sand in my shorts from last week that I'm still trying to get out.
Yes, you need to get that sand out of there,
And
Phil.
I've- and
don't
I've
throw anymore. Stop
I've
throwing
showered
sand.
like 3 times. I know. If you're going to climb in the sandbox and say something provocative, you're going to end up with a mouthful of sand, or at least your lunch mixed with sand, trying to get the sand out of your peanut butter and jelly sandwich. Sandwich! That's why we call it sandwich, because they were invented in the sandbox while everyone was throwing sand. Okay. Guys at home and girls at home, what do you think? Come to the website. Let us know. Is this something that you think denominations should try to find compromise on in the U.S.? Is there a middle ground, or does it have to be all of one way or all of the other way? Is this a zero-sum game, or can you split the difference and be faithful? And I bet people will have points of view about that. And now we'll be right back with more interesting stories after this short break. This episode of The Holy Post is also sponsored by Faithful Counseling. My life has had more than a few ups and downs, and sitting down with a trained professional who shares my faith has been incredibly helpful. Fortunately for me, I live in Wheaton, Illinois, where if you throw a rock, you'll hit at least 2 Christian therapists. But what if faith-based counseling isn't available where you live? Now it is. Faithful Counseling is a Christian counseling service with more than 3,000 licensed therapists across all 50 states, with access by video or phone sessions, or even chat and text from wherever you live, with expertise in depression, stress, anxiety, trauma, family conflicts, and more. You can ask for a new counselor at any time, and financial aid is available for those who qualify. Maybe it's time to take advantage of a trained Christian professional counselor by visiting faithfulcounseling.com/holypost. They've even got a special offer for Holy Post listeners. Right now, you can get 10% off your first month at faithfulcounseling.com/holypost. And thanks again to Faithful Counseling for sponsoring this episode. Hey, welcome back. Something happened. The Capitol was stormed. A lot of people stormed the Capitol, smashed windows, broke in, protesting the election, trying to overturn the election. Turns out a lot of them were Christians, waving Christian flags, singing praises to Jesus. Did you hear about this, Christian?
Well, wasn't that a year ago? Aren't we beyond that now, Phil?
No,
2 years ago.
Christian. It wasn't 2 years ago. It was a couple weeks ago in Brazil. Christians represented a significant faction of Capitol rioters in Brazil. At least 4 evangelical pastors were among those arrested after the attack on the Brazilian capital, Brasilia. Brasilia, home of the buildings that looked good 50 years ago. The storming of the capital city of Brasilia on January 8th by thousands of supporters of Brazil's former president, Bolsonaro, not only left a trail of destruction, but demonstrated that a very well-organized segment of the country's citizenry is willing to see a military dictatorship take power. It has become clear that hundreds of Christian organizations, neo-Pentecostal churches especially, but also Catholic groups, were involved or had members take part in the attempted coup. This just seems it's like Groundhog's Day. It's like we just woke up and, oh, wow, it happened again.
And that's just like they dubbed the movie that we made into Portuguese.
They did. They
First
did.
of all, I can't believe it's been 2 years. Has it really been 2 years?
Yeah, it was January 1st, 2021.
Yeah, we're 2 years into the Biden
Gosh,
January
administration.
where is
6th,
time
2021.
going? And also, what the heck? I mean, it's the same in Brazil that it is in the U.S.?
It's the same playbook. Bolsonaro fashioned himself as the Trump of Brazil.
Right.
He was actually, when the election was coming up, he was in communication with people like Steve Bannon on strategy for how do you not lose an election, even if you lose an election.
Oh, my goodness.
Before the election, he started complaining about voting machines.
You know what? This is Facebook's fault. This really is. It is Facebook's fault.
Here's the part I don't
I'm
get.
sure.
Yes.
If you're Bolsonaro and you're trying to figure out how do I maintain power if I lose
Power.
an election,
I'll ask Donald Trump.
why would you ask the people who did not succeed in the United States at that ploy?
Well, at least they learned some things from trying. You know, this is how we
Okay.
got halfway there, so maybe you could build upon what we did.
But he followed like the exact same playbook. Like you said, it was bad
It's gonna be
voting
rigged.
machines.
Pretty
it was
sure it's
rigged.
going to be rigged. Don't
We're gonna
trust the
send
voting machines.
a Christian mob to smear poop in the Capitol. All that kind of stuff is going. Like they did exactly the same thing, and it's not working there
Well,
either.
did people die?
Did anyone
So they
die?
improved. So they improved upon our
Well-
mess.
well,
At least people didn't die.
1,400 people have been arrested. I think we've arrested like 900. So they went way past us already. Numerous videos posted on social media showed rioters praying, shouting Christian slogans, and singing gospel hymns as they stormed the Capitol. It's kind of like the Gaithers run amok. You know, we're just going to sing hymns with our homecoming buddies. Do you know who the Gaithers are, Scott?
Yes.
Okay, you're okay. As they stormed the Capitol buildings. In one of the clips that went viral on Brazilian social media, a group is seen at the Senate Assembly Room, and one man shouts over and over again, "Brazil belongs to Lord Jesus. The Senate is our church. The Senate is the church of the people of God." It was almost like fan fiction of what happened here. Like
It's a copycat. It's a copycat crime.
Except there's more thongs.
surely not among the Pentecostals.
Or they're naked. Either one.
Surely not among the.
Okay,
See,
why is this news, Phil? Why is this
Why
news?
is it news? Because we're exporting some of the worst aspects of American Christian life around the world.
We've been doing that for a long time.
This makes me very sad.
Don't depress me, Sky.
Hey, my book With is published in Brazil. I think I have a Brazilian copy.
Well, can we
there
hand it out at these rallies? Because maybe that would have an impact.
Apparently, Sky Jitani, it's not working.
So we're exporting both the good and the bad parts of American Christianity.
Yeah, that's great. See, the new president of Brazil is left wing. Many conservatives believe his Workers' Party is a communist force bent on destroying Christian churches. Does that sound familiar? The other side are communists who want to kill Christianity. Those fears have become so deeply rooted that for some to believe their only hope is a military regime, that democracy is no longer strong enough to protect them or their
that's
churches.
Biblical.
Hey, ancient Israel was a military regime. David
That's
and
true.
all that.
That's true. They were waiting for a military coup.
A survey conducted on January 8th and 9th showed that 64% of evangelicals in Brazil supported a military coup. So Christians giving up on self-governance to try looking for a strong man to keep them safe.
This fits that pattern that we've been noticing, which is the link between what I'll call Christian fundamentalism and authoritarianism. This is Jesus and John Wayne. Kristen Kobes-Dumé talked about this, like that desire for a strong, enforced religious morality upon everyone. And democracy is messy, and pluralism allows people you don't like to have as much power as you do. So the way around that is you empower someone, or in this case, a military regime, to do what you want done. And that's what's scary about religious fundamentalism, is it gives up on the idea of diversity and pluralism and loving one's neighbor in order to dominate one's neighbor.
Why do we assume if there's going to be a strong man that it's going to be our strong man?
Right. But even if it is, that's still bad.
Yes, it's still bad. I'm not saying that's good, but even the desire to, this thing where we get to choose our own leaders, I don't like that anymore. I don't want to choose my own leader. Well, actually, I just want to be the only one to get to choose the leader. So I want democracy, but me. How does it even work where you would give up on democracy and assume you would still have the leader of your choice?
But we're seeing this not just in that realm, but think about, I believe in freedom of speech as long as I get to cancel anybody who says things I don't like.
Yeah.
Or I believe in religious liberty as long as my religion gets to dominate everyone else's. It's not religious liberty. It's not freedom of speech. It's not democracy. It's not pluralism. If I always win and I don't have to share my country with anyone I disagree with, that's the problem, is too many people aren't willing to share.
But the problem is, though, that real Americans aren't calling the shots. The real Americans need to be the real Brazilians, the true Brazilians. There's too many others. There's too many others around.
That's nationalism.
And they get to vote too. And that's messing everything up. So Donald Trump, do you remember Donald Trump?
Heard of him.
Unfortunately.
He was on an interesting show. The name of the show is Real America's Voice. Did you catch that?
No.
Real America's Voice.
Everyone else is fake.
Yeah, not fake America's Voice. Being interviewed by David Brody. And David Brody asked Trump about evangelical leaders such as Robert Jeffress, the Texas pastor we've talked about a lot because he was one of the former president's most earliest and most stalwart supporters, the one who had his choir sing a hymn to Trump, a hymn written to Trump when Trump came to visit. But he said that he would not endorse Trump unless Trump wins the GOP primary first. So he is waiting. And David Brody on Real America's Voice, not fake America, Real America, asked him, what do you think about that? What do you think about evangelical leaders not immediately running out to endorse you? And Trump said, you know what Trump said? Because this is how he thinks. He thinks, well, this is America. Everyone should choose to support whom they want to choose.
No, it's a betrayal.
That's not what he said. He says it's a sign of disloyalty. It's a sign of disloyalty. This is where you start talking like the Godfather. It's a sign of disloyalty. There's great disloyalty in the world of politics, and that's a sign of disloyalty.
Because when I think of loyalty, the first picture that comes to my mind is Donald Trump.
And when you're the Godfather, you don't have to be loyal.
Of course you do.
To demand loyalty.
No. If you know the Godfather, he's the most loyal. That's why he inspires loyalty in everyone else.
Oh, okay.
But not Donald Trump. I mean, his whole career and personal life is marked by disloyalty. He doesn't pay his contractors. He doesn't stay committed to his wives. He throws people under the bus left, right, and center. I mean, how many people worked for him because he hires the best people, and then the moment they leave, he's destroying them online and disparaging them. Like he has no loyalty, but he demands it of everyone else.
Yes. Yes.
Can we change the subject?
Robert Jeffress was asked.
Can we go to the next article? Seriously.
No, I'm not quite done yet, Christian Taylor. Robert Jeffress was asked about this, said that Trump said you're not being loyal to him by not endorsing him immediately after everything he's done for you. And Robert Jeffress said, recently I said to President Trump privately and on Fox News publicly that President Trump was our greatest president since Reagan and had done more for evangelicals than any president in history. I just love that quote. Our greatest president since Reagan did more for evangelicals than any president in history. Hopefully President Trump doesn't think of me as being disloyal for not volunteering a primary endorsement he's not requested from me.
Oh, he's just saying he hasn't been asked yet?
Yeah, I actually haven't been asked. So did he say, you know what, my loyalty is to Jesus Christ, or my loyalty is to the Constitution, or my loyalty is to my people, my church? He said, no, don't say I'm not loyal to you, President Trump. You just haven't asked me for my show of fealty yet.
But isn't this kind of live by the sword, die by the sword? A lot of evangelical leaders made a transactional decision that if we support Trump in 2016, he will give us the things we want. It was totally transactional.
We will win.
And now when it looks like Trump is weaker, they're not as willing to sign on board because it's transactional. It's just, it's exactly what they signed up for and what Trump signed up for.
Okay, now is it time to move on?
No, because you have to tell us what you think. Christian, what do you think?
This is old and tired. And this article, here I am trying to extend the conversation at the same time I'm trying to end it. However, I mean, why is this one guy speaking for all evangelicals, And
Robert
why does
Jeffress?
Yeah. I mean, he's speaking for himself clearly because he hasn't been
called
asked.
out. He got called out personally. Why aren't you loyal to Donald Trump? Why didn't you endorse him immediately after everything he's done for you?
Yeah, and I'm not certain that all evangelicals share his position,
That they're waiting?
Yeah.
No, but there haven't been since Trump announced. I don't know of any evangelical leaders who have immediately endorsed him as their choice. There are probably some, but I just haven't.
But don't you
it.
think once the primaries get rolling in 2024, January 2024, if Trump shows any strength, any ability to win, they're going to fall right in line behind him again?
Yes, I do think that.
Probably.
Yeah.
Probably.
Or whoever the front runner is, they will line up ready to get their ticket stamped.
Yeah. Well, because the other side is communists and they want to destroy all our churches. No, wait,
but you don't have to line up for either of them. It's not like this is you have to choose one or the other. You can stand by Jesus and judge candidates from either party on how they do or don't conform to the values that he stands for. But
well, I mean, if Jesus could give us what we want, maybe we would stand with him. But obviously,
he's not in the business of giving us political power.
He is not meeting our expectations for a Messiah. And that's, we had bigger plans. We thought we'd kick out the Romans. We thought we would set up our own government. We thought that everything would be puppies and rainbows with Jesus. I just know what to say. Christian.
Yes.
Do you think we should move on?
Please.
Okay. Do you think all of this is affecting how America views the ethics of the profession of clergy?
Well, I think that's been in question for some time.
Yeah, it is. Gallup's newest ethics survey is out. The percentage measuring the percentage of people who rate various professions, the ethical standards of various professions as either high or very high. Okay, so what percentage of Americans rate people from the following professions as high, their ethics as high or very high? What's the number one profession for high ethical regard from Americans?
Number one profession,
high ethics.
My guess is it is a, what are those workers called? First responders.
And that's not really a profession.
Well, it has to be somebody on the front lines.
like a firefighter.
Yeah.
A firefighter,
Something like
nurse,
that.
doctor.
Yeah, okay. And the number one is almost 20 points higher than the number two. Ooh, what is the number one that's almost 20 points higher than the number two?
Well, you can just tell us. We don't know.
A nurse.
You are right, Christian Taylor. Nurses. Nurses are considered
them.
the most ethical people, not doctors. It's just interesting. Nurses are considered the most ethical people in American professional life. Number two is doctors, but it drops 20 points between
Can I tell you
nurses
what
and
is
doctors.
not in the top 10?
What would you say?
Lawyers. I can tell you that because I'm married to one and I live with him daily.
Yes, on a theme, number three is pharmacists. So we
Interesting.
trust our nurses most of all. Oh, my nurse told me that, doctor, so I'm going with my nurse. Then we trust our doctors. Then we trust our pharmacists. Then we trust our high school teachers. Number
Seriously?
4. Yeah, high school teachers are number 4.
Wow.
But we've fallen all the way down to 80% trust in the ethics of nurses to 53% trust in the ethics of high school teachers. Then police officers, okay, after
I'm
high
surprised
school
that's
teachers,
that high.
50% believe police officers have high or very high ethics, half. Then accountants at 40%.
Surprised that's that high.
Now we're all the way down to 40%. Judges also at 40%. So judges and accountants are, heck, they're no pharmacists, that's for sure. And then number 8, clergy.
It's actually higher than I expected.
Yeah, I would expect them to be lower as well.
Coming in at 34%. 34% of Americans would say clergy have high or very high ethics.
Well,
just barely ahead of bankers. That's not good company.
Well, there have been a lot of sexual scandals and
Yes, there have.
abuses, and I think that's where the clergy's ethics, that and like money problems.
Who would you say are the bottom 5? Okay,
Out of how
starting
many?
from 5th to out of 17.
A
17
politician.
professions.
Politician
for sure.
Yeah.
Fifth worst, fourth worst, third worst, second worst, first worst. 5th worst, advertising executives.
I believe that.
4th worst, business executives. Worse than advertising executives. But it's almost identical.
Yeah, it's a broader category.
3rd worst, car salesmen. See, now it's just now.
Poor car salesmen. They
I know.
always get the brunt of the joke.
I know. But what's even worse than car salesmen? Number 1, members of Congress. And number 2, the least ethical people in America, telemarketers.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
fun.
And
I
you know
don't-
what?
Go
My
ahead.
father, I am outraged because my 80-year-old father, who's losing his memory, the biggest downfall is that everybody in the world is marketing their crap to these 80-year-olds on CNN and Fox News, and
Yeah.
they lie up one side and down the other. So, yes, I believe that they should be on the bottom.
Do you see any politicians also sending out pieces of mail to your
Yes.
father that may or may not be completely
Yes,
honest?
and asking for donations and trying to scare the heck out of him to make sure that he gives them all of his money.
Yeah. Lawyers
that's-
came in
that's-
as 6th to the bottom. So I gave you
Yes.
the 5 worst. Lawyers
Yes.
were just above that. Journalists just above that. So we consider journalists now equally dishonest as lawyers, which is a
course
little
we
bit
do.
scary.
Unless they're in our echo chamber.
Yes, unless it's my journalist. The one that I've decided is the good one.
Then I trust them 100%. And if they tell me something is true, it has to be true.
So I'm going to go out on a limb and say that categorization of clergy is distorted by the media in the sense that the clergy that get the most attention, first of all, are the ones that want the most attention, or are the ones that are doing terrible things. So what the country sees from clergy is either attention-seeking behavior or bad behavior.
I'll go with
Does
that.
this report get into any more detail? Like, for example, I bet there's a difference between people who have a personal relationship with a pastor or minister versus those who do not. Because if you
That would
don't
be
know
interesting.
a pastor and all you see is what the media is depicting, you're probably going to have a general negative view of them.
Well,
but
that's
if you
true with everything. Same with lawyers.
Exactly. Or you mentioned journalists. Like journalists, oh yeah, they're all lying scum, except for the one that I read every day, who is completely the paragon
Right.
of truth.
Most trustworthy.
So, right.
So are we just becoming less trusting people?
Yes.
We're just skeptical of everyone except our nurse?
We are not becoming less trustful people. We are choosing to trust in what we choose to trust in.
Okay. More suspicious, more narrowly trusting.
We trust, it's just where we put our trust.
Does this report explain like trends? Like, have clergy been moving down? Are they moving up? Are they static from past surveys? Did you see that?
Scott just needs more information.
I do
Phil.
not
You
know this,
cannot
Scott.
come to these podcasts without all of the information.
I didn't even know we were recording a podcast today until about 2 hours before the podcast.
You must
So
not read your emails.
I didn't read it. It was on Slack, and I didn't notice, and it was also in my calendar, and I didn't look at my calendar because it's Friday. It's Friday.
Well, it's on you. It's on
We're
you,
supposed
Phil.
to record on Monday. Who's out of town
We're
on
not
Monday?
gonna
Is it
trust you
Scott? Are
anymore.
out of town on Monday?
Yes, I'm out of town.
Oh, it's
Not
your
me.
fault.
I'm stuck in a chair.
I'm not prepped because it's your fault. Okay. Interesting stories, huh? What did you think about all this stuff? Do you trust your clergy? If you don't, you're probably at the wrong church, just right off the top of my head. Do you trust your nurse? Yes. Would you like your nurse to be your pastor? Do you think that would go better? I don't know. Who do we trust? and
Hopefully
why?
they trust us.
Should they, though? Should we trust anyone?
Well, they should trust me.
How about just
because
podcasters?
I am not going to lie to you. I will be your friend. I will respond to you on Twitter. So I will, I'll give us a good curve.
There was one category missing from this survey, and that was, nurses, doctors, pharmacists, Christian Taylor.
Yes, I was missing.
Yeah, and that's
I would get a high trustfulness mark.
92% at least, at a minimum. Okay, we will be back later this week with a guest interview in depth that you can learn all sorts of things from. Thank you, Patreon supporters, for making stuff possible. There was a new Christian Asks up last week, correct? And so go check that out. And there's new stuff coming up all the time that you can only get if you're a Patreon subscriber.
Pretty much every week.
Pretty much every week. We're so busy.
Yeah. And
all the elves here. Yes.
And we also have the Holy Post Book Club, and we have our live streams, and we have some other new things that are going to be coming very soon that will be exclusive for Patreon people.
Have you announced the cruise yet? The Holy Post cruise?
Oh, no. We are not doing a Holy Post
Phil.
cruise.
People are going to take you seriously. There is no cruise coming.
Amy Grant and Michael W. Smith are going to do the music, and then Sky's going to preach.
Guys, he's teasing. Don't believe him.
And Christian Taylor's going to have breakout discussion groups.
I'm going to be
about
pastoring.
What should we do because of all this? What should we do because of all this?
Yeah.
And it's going to be
How
great.
does this impact us daily?
I'm just going to be sitting in my room playing my ukulele quietly to myself.
Wishing this cruise was not happening.
Trying to figure out how the toilets work.
And making sure that no one can see you.
Can someone please go to the buffet for me and bring me back a plate of food? All right. Thanks, y'all. We'll see you next week. Goodbye.
Bye, everybody.
The Holy Post Podcast is a production of Holy Post Media. Help us create more thoughtful Christian media by supporting us at patreon.com/Holy Post. Also, be sure to leave a review on iTunes so more people can discover thoughtful Christian commentary, plus ukulele, and occasional butt news. Visit holypost.com for show notes, news stories, Holy Post merchandise, and much more.